You're live.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Free Assange Vigil. This is incredibly week number 68 in a row of these. My name is Steve Poikin, and I'm joined this evening by my co-hosts Andrew Smith, Kendra Christian, and Misty Winston. We are also joined this evening by Shadowproof's Kevin Gosztola, and we're going to be going through the witness statements of Jen Robinson and Cassandra Fairbanks from the rendition hearing of Julian Assange. But before we do that, let me run through some numbers with you real quick. Today marks 3,607 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange, 561 days since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the United Kingdom for a $4.2 billion IMF loan. There are 76 days left until District Judge Vanessa Baratzer, the concierge of the U.S. State Department, reads her decision, which will take place on January 4th of next year. Reality Winner has been in federal incarceration for 1,232 days. On the plus side, today is 218 days of freedom for Chelsea Manning. And she streams on Twitch Thursday through Sunday from 7 to 11 East Coast time. So with that, I will turn it over to Andre for the call to action for the week.
Yeah, so this week's call to action, which should be in the description down below for everybody, is getting people to look into and buying alternative advertising methods, so like billboards, newspapers, the stuff that we had talked about, I think it was last Tuesday or Saturday, for putting up. And this is because the censorship online is to the point that most Free Assange people end up just talking to the Free Assange community. So the hope is to be able to spread it and spread what is happening to Julian to the general public. So I have a link to help people find a skywriting and air banner advertising company, local radio, local newspaper, and billboard purchases. So if you're interested in it, I think it would be really cool. It may be something we look at doing a crowdfunding effort for in the future, but I just wanted to put those tools out there for everybody to use if they're interested in taking advantage of them. How are you today, Misty?
I am doing very well. We had a birthday in my house today, so I'm tired, but there's cake and ice cream, so I feel okay about it.
Nice.
You know. How are you, Kendra? I'm so glad to have another girl.
Yeah,
So happy.
it's good to see you. I'm good. I was just thinking about Andrew's your call to action for this week. We did that in Denver before our last event with one of our local papers, the Westward, and it was actually really cheap. So it's a great thing to do. And if anybody needs help with graphics or anything like that too, just reach out on Twitter and stuff, so there's plenty out there.
Your video's frozen on us, Kendra. Could you try hopping out and hopping back in again for like the 100th time?
Sorry, guys.
I think she told us it was our problem, didn't she?
That's what I heard.
Wrong.
Personally, being the embodiment of innocence that I am, I claim no responsibility for that whatsoever.
I can see you.
I call bullshit. Okay. Did we get her back?
We're back,
Wait,
and it looks like she's
say
in the
something.
video.
Or like, wave your fucking arms around.
Hi.
Just there you go. All right.
Can you see me?
The level of professionalism on this show never ceases to amaze me.
So scripted.
Without any further ado, I would like to welcome Kevin Gosztola, everybody. How are you today, sir?
Hey, it's good to be joining you.
Thank you very much for joining us. So I wanted to start with just your overall feel of public opinion at this point, if the case has got enough media attention, Julian's case has, so just kind of where we're at right now with all that.
Yeah, so I do think that we're in an important point where it feels like there's a lull and we're just waiting, but there's a lot that could be done to keep this in the public eye and to cover I'm still looking at parts of the extradition trial that I maybe didn't give a lot of attention. I'm still putting together reporting on it that'll come out in the next several weeks, and it's very clear that we've seen from Stella Morris in the last week or so that there's a reason to still pay close attention because the heating wasn't working at Belmarsh Prison, and we don't really know, what that's about, but it's, just probably the way things are at any prison or jail facility around the world that's in disrepair, that it can happen. And so it was nice that people responded to that and they restored the heating. We need to keep on this, even though we're waiting till January 4th for some kind of an outcome. And as Stella laid out, I think it definitely changes my opinion, because I had been expecting this to last a long time as far as the appeals, but she lays out a future after this decision where it could be a matter of months before he's exhausted all of his opportunities, and then we would see him flown to the United States, because she says you could see the high court rule in a matter of months on an appeal, and then he might just be flatly rejected by the European Court of Human Rights and not even be able to bring his case before them, and then all of his options would be exhausted and he would be on his way to the U.S.
One of the things that Victor, the journalist from France, had some concerns with is the EU and the US, or the EU and the UK's ending. That there's special treaties for political asylum that are in play until after the first of the year 2021. So I think that that's a particularly interesting thing too that's happening behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, and I don't expect a whole lot from any either of the outcomes in the election are not good for Julian Assange. I don't expect a whole lot to change, but I think that the big thing for us to recognize is that it could happen sooner than we imagined, that we could see Julian Assange in the United States. And I myself had been preparing for quite a long time that he would be able to fight, because there are these prior cases. Like, let's just take, for example, Lori Love's case. That was something that I think took 8 to 10 years before that had resolved. And there were appeals, and that was ultimately one where Lori prevailed. I don't know if it's going to be that way. Julian Assange is a much different person than Lori Love, especially in the fact that there are leaders of governments all over that have united in hatred of Julian Assange. And so it may not play out the same way. It may actually be more swift that he is denied justice.
I agree. I was a little bit surprised by that too. I had expected at least a 2-year process or something. And I think that Stella had said, was it May? That it could be as soon as May?
Yeah.
It kind of puts another level of urgency on everything, because I'm with Kevin. I totally thought that this was going to take years. I mean, would be dragged out in the court systems and through the appeals process. And I mean, I was really hunkering down for this long drawn out battle. And now hearing that, we may only have a few months, it's, it makes me anxious just thinking about it, because, we have so much less time to rally the troops, The
last morning that we had done hearing coverage, to drag our haggard asses out of bed at dumb o'clock in the morning, get in front of a camera and try and make sense of this madness. It dawned on me, as it wrapped, as I was going to work, that the next several months are going to be more crucial and busier than I had ever imagined they were going to be. And that was before I had any cognition of a streamlined process for this, or a fast-tracked process for this. And it seems like with the ratcheting up of the war on journalists and on journalism, and with YouTube going just apeshit, censor happy with everybody, it seems like I guess the general fear quotient for the people in power has been, as the war on journalism has ratcheted up, that fear quotient has ratcheted up too. And my brother used to say that the only thing that's worse than a bored cop is a scared cop, and we've got the entire Five Eyes government's running around acting like a scared cop. And it's a bit unsettling. Wonder if you have any thoughts on that, Kevin.
Well, what we've benefited from, I think, in the last 4 years is that there is a division between the people who are Donald Trump's appointees and the people who are the bureaucrats within national security agencies in the United States. And it's very clear that as far as policy, they disagree on how the United States should operate as the most powerful country in the world and how they should impose their will and dominate other countries. And with the likelihood that Joe Biden will prevail and make it into the White House, we can see the cast of characters that we're going to have to contend with, because they've attached their names to things like this letter that was just publicized by Politico about the Hunter Biden email story, saying this is all the earmarks of a Russian information operation, when there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. And they even admit in their letter that they have no evidence whatsoever to make that claim. But when they get into the White House with Joe Biden, there's going to be nobody to tell them no. There's going to be no debate. You know, Trump might shoot that down now, but with the change, we'll have the White House on the same page with the CIA and all other parts of the intelligence industrial complex. There will be unanimous agreement among military agencies. Biden's going to go along with whatever those people have to say, and I think that it's going to be dark, because these former intelligence officials who are basically laying down the tracks and helping Biden get to the White House, essentially grabbing him by the arm and making sure he doesn't slip and fall on his way to the White House. There's no way that this happens without them expecting something in return. And I'm left thinking that we might have missed an opportunity, because while there was pressure that could be applied to Donald Trump, because, he doesn't want to go down as the losingest, most loser president in U.S. history, there's been really nothing, I think, if I had to make one constructive criticism about this movement, and I haven't even really known how I could plug myself in and make this happen, but I don't think enough has been done to pressure the people on the right who could have maybe made a fuss for Julian Assange and made Donald Trump
tried.
And it's just, and I think that I'll be sympathetic to the fact that maybe that support was always a little phony, and that's why it's really tough to get people to move. But I just think it's going to be so much harder with Joe Biden, who we go back to 2010, he's calling Julian Assange a high-tech terrorist. And I just don't see. And then you look at the people who are going to be inside and outside of his administration. And then you look at what happened with Bolivia in the last couple of days and how they prevailed. And you've got a former Obama administration official, Ben Rhodes, being like basically condemning Donald Trump for stupid imperialism, is kind of like how he phrased it, and saying that Biden's going to do it better, is going to be able to rule and colonize these people better. And I just think there's this whole group of people who can't wait to get back in there and show everyone how it's supposed to be done. And they're going to be some of the worst, most arrogant pricks you've ever seen this side of the world. And we're going to have to deal with them in trying to free Julian Assange.
Yeah,
I think that you bring up a
neoliberal core deep state does not sit well with me.
No, but I do think that you bring up a good point, though, in talking to people on the right. And you're probably right. The people on the right who are in positions of power, that, whatever support that they faked through Julian or whatever, you're probably right. That is phony support, or was phony support. It suited them at the time. But I do think that there are just people on the right that we could have and should have maybe been reaching out to more. It's funny. In the past couple of weeks, I've seen multiple people say it. It's easier to talk to conservatives than it is to talk to liberals. Well, duh. Yes, that's very true. Conservatives are often more willing to hear you out. You hear about conservatives who watch Jimmy Dore and they love Jimmy Dore, and, they may disagree with him on some stuff, but they're willing to listen to him. And so I've actually, to Kevin's point, I've been thinking that myself, that, maybe we can't go after, people on the right who are in positions of power, because people in positions of power are probably not going to be on our side no matter what. But if we start talking to the voters, Trump's base, if we had started that several months ago and maybe gotten them to a point where they're putting pressure on him, that may have worked out better to our benefit. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because that's something that I've myself been thinking about recently.
Since day one on this vigil, we've been telling people to go to where Trump's base is and have these conversations with them. And huge shout out to Glory Jones, who's my co-host on Slow News Day, for doing just that thing.
That girl will go talk with some Proud Boys. She got no fear.
Yeah, I have varying different opinions on who the Proud Boys are, and it depends on what location you're at where they are, and it depends on all kinds of shit. But I don't think Enrique Tarrio is inherently racist. It'd be a little weird, But I had a very fucking pleasant conversation with that guy. I did. It was a perfectly normal, nice chat. I didn't feel afraid for my life or anything like that. They're, they've got us so willing to hate people that we've never met.
And I think well, Steve, I was just going to say, because with our group, we do have, our group is pretty much split down the middle with left and right. But I'm not going to say that that's not easy on even the people in the group, because one thing that's very common to anybody, whether you're on the left or you're on the right, is that you think you're being post-partisan, but you're actually you might be talking about something that seems so obvious to you, so you don't think about it, but it can really turn somebody off. So I think what would have really helped is if some of these people, if we had more people on the right that did support Assange, or maybe if we just tried to have individual movements, left for Assange or right for Assange, because the country's just so divided. It's been really hard, because I know we've talked about it, and we've had I think my best conversations have been with people who are Assange supporters, that we would totally voted for different people on different sides. It's actually really refreshing. So I don't know. We still have some time to pressure Trump, right? We have some time to do that.
Well, yeah, and I'm aware that there were a couple interviews that were done taking advantage of the fact that Trump watches Fox News as much as he possibly can. So Pamela Anderson was on, and Glenn Greenwald went on, and they both talked about pardons for Julian Assange, or I guess we would just if anything, we would just drop the charges. That'd be good enough too. But a pardon would prevent any case from being brought forward against him on at least the charges that are in the indictment. So I'm not going to say that nothing has happened, and I'm not going to necessarily say that I want to make common cause with every single group that's out there on the right. That's my own personal view. Right. But I do think, in general, the people who are do not belong to anything particular and are just, out there following this and don't necessarily categorize themselves. It's just a lot of people don't categorize themselves politically. They just are following what's going on in the world. And I think those people are the ones that we need to mobilize more than ever, because the one thing that's a fact that I think your show will have to deal with in the first, No, I understand. I'm treating it as inevitable that Joe Biden's going to pull this off just because of things that I've seen. And let me just do a disclaimer and say, if he loses, it's on them. It wasn't Russia. It wasn't the Hunter Biden email story. It's because you lost and you ran a really shitty campaign and somehow repeated what happened in 2016, which, you know, I still say Hillary Clinton ran a really shitty campaign, and it's on her that we've had to live through 4 years of Donald Trump. If that's what you really believe, that you hate him, it's on her totally. So that's my disclaimer. But what you'll have to struggle with for the most of a Biden term is the fact that we know from the Obama years that a lot of progressives and liberals just roll over and play dead while a Democrat is in office, and they're reluctant to challenge and do anything that will irritate the administration. I hear a lot of people saying it's going to be different. I'll believe it when I see it, because I have my own experience, and I just think that a lot of that hold your feet to the fire is a bunch of nonsense, because nobody really means that. Nobody means that any more than they mean vote for Joe and don't vote for a spoiler candidate. And believe me, I'll be there to help you build a third party in between elections. Nope, that never happens.
Right.
We still have a two-party system. You're still making us do the Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And
well, AOC just sent her other strongly worded letter to Joe Biden about not putting Republicans in his cabinet. And then the next day he announces that he's vetting multiple Republicans for his cabinet. So your strongly worded letter was, good help. Good job, guys.
Right. It was good optics for her base, for the people that are going to vote for her. It was great.
Yeah, it's performative nonsense. It's
and Kevin, you're incredibly astute. I mean, in general, sir, but with
on what point?
If the goal of a political campaign is to win the race that you're in, Hillary Clinton did everything wrong. Like, it was just a shit campaign from start to finish, and we're seeing almost the exact same thing with Biden, where they know that their message is so just horrendous. They know that they stand for basically nothing. They know that they have nothing to offer the average person. So the only thing they can campaign on is, I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
I'm not Donald Trump. And that's not fucking enough. It's definitely not enough for somebody like me who doesn't have, a gigantic bank account or vacation time or shit like that. Like, I didn't miss brunch over the 4 years that Trump has been in office. That's there's so many neoliberals, and I've seen them on Twitter in the last couple of days that are like, I can't wait to just not have to worry about what's on TV, and I'm gonna tune out for fuck. They've already fucking cashed in their chips, and they're not gonna be a fucking part of the process. And that's when all of the horrible shit happens. That's when the NAFTA happens. That's when the fucking Telecom Act happens. It's when the Patriot Act happened, or I'm sorry, the Omnibus Counterterrorism Act that Biden wrote in the mid-90s. It became the Patriot Act. It takes a president with a D next to their name to pass the fucking sweetheart legislation that they had to pretend to have a token resistance for when the president had an R after their name. And that's the whole that's the game in a nutshell right there. And I don't know why so many fucking people are willing to continually delude themselves that, like, oh, sure, we'll give Joe Biden all the power he's ever wanted without him giving a single concession to us for our vote. We're going to give him our vote. And then after he's got that power, then we're going to hold his feet to the fire. Are you fucking drunk?
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to get in there without any of our help, he won't need...
Of course, my camera would fuck up right then, too.
He won't, he won't give us anything at all. And I think an example that is worth illustrating what you're saying here is that during Bush, torture, you had people, which we've exposed. We've seen through WikiLeaks the extent to which we've seen through these Iraq war logs that are going to have their 10th anniversary in the next couple of days. We know from the report on CIA torture. We know all these details. We know that this was what the Republicans wanted to do with anybody who was detained for terrorism. And so we all said that waterboarding was bad and we're not going to do it anymore. And, Barack Obama said we tortured some folks and everything was going to be moving forward, and we're not going to do that. And I think the balls on the Obama administration to go forward and basically pioneer a regime of drone killing after that, where they are going to do even worse than what conservatives had done, where they're not just going to interrogate them and torture them. No, we're just going to outright wipe them off the face of the map in regions. Had several conservatives going how can you be consistent here? You're against torture, but you're for extrajudicial assassinations. That doesn't make any sense. That person's gone, and then when you torture them, that person's still alive, yes, but you're gonna drone bomb them, and then they're not here anymore. Why can you get away with that, but we can't get away with torturing people? And I guess I'm illustrating the barbarism here of these two parties, and the fact that it seems like the creep just gets worse and worse, and it's the Democrats that co-signed that leap that you can never go back from. I mean, you Republicans look and go, oh, the Democrats are going to do that. Well, we've always wanted to do that. We've always wanted to just, send a missile from a robot and kill an entire Middle Eastern family in just a split second. We've always wanted to be able to do that with our firepower. Let's get the contracts with Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics and Raytheon and everything. Let's get some more of this gear. We've always wanted to do this. And, I think that's what makes this, to bring it back to Julian and keep this all center here, is that's what makes this case so crucial, because it doesn't just implicate one political party. It implicates both political parties. It implicates everyone that runs the government. It implicates all the bureaucrats. It implicates everybody who's involved in the day-to-day. And I think it's what most frustrates the Justice Department. I think it's why people wanted to come after Julian Assange, is because they know those records and those materials contain those revelations that show what the United States really is when it acts around the world. And I think that's what we're up against, is showing people that, to a certain extent, I write off a lot of the liberals and progressives who are outraged at Donald Trump as almost worthless. I don't really know how we're going to bring them along. But, if any of them look at what Trump is doing with Julian Assange and are outraged and think it somehow ends because Joe Biden becomes president, I think this is where the education begins, because it's absolutely not going to shift just because we have a Democrat in office.
That's something that kind of has frustrated me, and I'm interested to get your take on this, Kevin. Why do you think it is that progressive politicians, Bernie Sanders, AOC, the whole squad, why do you think it is that they refuse to speak on this? Because they have two things that they can fall back on to make this a socially acceptable issue for them to take up. They have the fact that Barack Obama refused to prosecute Julian Assange due to the threat it posed to the First Amendment. So they can easily hide behind Barack Obama. And then they can also hide behind Donald Trump. Trump's bad. Look, Trump's bad. So they have these two amazing, fail safes that they can kind of hide behind and disguise whatever, political ramifications that there may be, but by saying, I'm just doing what Barack Obama did. And yet I can't get them to, take my calls, respond to my emails, respond to my tweets, nothing. It's pulling teeth, and it's incredibly depressing. Do you have any thoughts on why that is?
Yeah, I think that these former U.S. intelligence officials like John Brennan and James Clapper and these other people who have essentially tarred and feathered Julian Assange as some kind of plant or cutout for Russian intelligence, they're responsible for the fact that we're not going to be able, or that we have a really hard time mobilizing support for him when it comes to a case that should be really easy to get people to see is wrong. I mean, there's nothing in this case that has anything to do with that part of the WikiLeaks timeline. That being said, I don't think we should just say that and cop out. I think we should meet it head on, because I don't think the facts are there on the side. But I also think that you know, the Justice Department is playing a game here, because they know that this the way that WikiLeaks was attacked around the Clinton campaign emails actually removes a huge segment of the population from supporting Julian Assange. And so what you have is, if you're the Justice Department and the prosecutors, and you're wondering if you can get away with bringing this unprecedented case, you say, okay, well, the progressives are gone, or the Democrats are gone because they don't like Julian Assange. They believe he elected Hillary Clinton. And then Donald Trump is in office, and Donald Trump's going to go along with this prosecution. That's going to remove his supporters. That's going to remove Republicans who aren't going to question him. So then that takes care of everything we have to worry about as the Justice Department in terms of getting this through and pursuing this extradition. We're going to be able to do our work without worrying about people mobilizing to stop us from carrying out this case, this political prosecution. And so I think, you know, we shouldn't give that up because it's not part of the indictment. And I, you know, this is something I haven't gotten to, but I want to look at more closely. There was about a month ago, actually it happened before, so it was like a month and a half. It was before the extradition trial took place. There was a Senate intelligence report on the Russia investigation that had a whole chapter about what they thought WikiLeaks had to do with all of this. And there were a lot of falsehoods and misinformation, if not outright, you know, disinformation planted by intelligence agencies in there that needs to be dealt with. And I think that, you know, once we can unpack and unravel some of this, we might be able to make some kind of headway, but it's just a lot of people have been, I'm sorry to say it, but there's no other word for it, brainwashed by these last 4 years. And it's extraordinarily difficult to reach them. And I think that's why I find the episode with the Hunter Biden email story so infuriating, because it's basically a product of post-traumatic stress disorder on the part of progressives who are afraid that they're seeing something play out all over again that they experienced back in October of 2016. But the fact is that they don't remember it correctly. They don't actually know what happened because they've been manipulated into believing that they lived through a traumatic event that actually didn't take place. They've been manipulated into believing that, you know, Russia interfered in our election, and that's why we got Donald Trump. They're not just taking it on, you know, on its face that, like, okay, we have Donald Trump because we have something called an electoral college that's so antiquated that you should throw it out. Like, we should have gotten rid of it like 50, 75 years ago, especially if we were going to truly allow for the emancipation of African Americans, and if we were going to have, you know, equality and everyone have access to the vote. We would probably do away with an institution like the Electoral College. Or then also, like, Hillary Clinton knew that was the system that she had to abide by in order to get elected. And so she knew what states she had to win. This is the way every single presidential campaign has to operate. So don't come and tell me that she won the popular vote and she didn't get in and that's wrong, when that's the same thing that, like, Al Gore had to deal with in 2000, but he didn't actually fight. He agreed not to, like, do any more than he had already done to challenge the outcome. He rolled over basically after the 5-4 decision in the Supreme Court. So what I'm saying here is that like this didn't just happen in 2016. We've had multiple elections in which this has festered and gotten worse and worse. Our democracy is has just been corroding and corroding and corroding. And this is where we are. And so now this Hunter Biden email story happens, and people aren't realizing that this has a connection to Julian Assange's case in the fact that the Silicon Valley companies are invoking a rule against talking about published hacked materials, because that's how they believe they were obtained, although I know that there's a disagreement about whether they were hacked or not. But they're invoking a rule that was specifically drafted by them with the support of these former intelligence officials in order to limit and crack down on the ability of WikiLeaks to do its work and other organizations to do its work and to share their work through Twitter and Facebook and these other social media platforms. So they're very much connected. And so, I'm not that, I don't really have much to say, and I'm not that interested in the content of the emails, but I can't help but stand back in awe at the way in which this is all playing out among the media and among Democrats who are just so craven and out of their goddamn minds when it comes to all of this, because they, like they're actually giving Donald Trump a gift by doing this and creating a future that's bad for Julian. Like, I mean, I have to say that I don't know that Joe Biden is going to be movable. I don't know that we're going to be able to get a Democratic Justice Department to back away, but let's just say we don't know. And if Donald Trump was defeated and we had that opportunity with a Biden Justice Department, I think we should want to take it as an opportunity to see what could happen, because we've not been able to move the Trump Justice Department to back down, even though he's been under indictment for, well, the indictment was actually stamped March 2018. So for 2 to 2.5 years, they've been seriously pursuing this case against Julian Assange. But we know that the Obama Justice Department respected some of the law enough to not bring charges against Julian Assange. They left the grand jury open. Maybe there was something they were searching for, but they didn't bring a case against Julian Assange. So we don't know if we could get them to go back to say that they crossed the line and the Justice Department shouldn't pursue this case. We simply don't know. I have my own opinion, and I think Biden will go along with this case once he's in office, if he's elected. But I think like we should want to see what would happen with a Biden Justice Department. That simply can't happen if you are handling something like this that's supposed to be an October surprise in a way that is a total gift to the Trump administration, a total gift to Rudy Giuliani, a total gift to everyone at Fox News and the whole Murdoch empire that has wanted Julian Assange to be hung and executed since he set foot. Since he published the first documents from Chelsea Manning, they have wanted him dead. People like John Bolton going on there and calling for Julian's death. And I just, I'm dumbfounded, because I don't know how you can be this politically stupid, because Donald Trump has just invited everyone to die en masse from a coronavirus. Just basically said, I don't care. Let the number keep going up. It's 100,000. It's 150. It's 200,000. It's 250,000. Who gives a shit? Just, I'm not going to do anything about it. And it couldn't be an easier election for Joe Biden to win. And yet somehow it's up in the air. Somehow, like, we still don't really know what's going to happen.
We do want to get into some of these statements with you, but I want your opinion on something. And before I do that, you know how, because Barry Weiss was such a fucking idiot, we got a gift out of that in the new word smugnerant. I want a word. So this is my challenge, not just to you, Kevin Gosztola, but to everyone watching right now. I want a word for like the combination of hubris and being tone deaf to create a sort of campaign energy that only someone with instant grits where their brains should have been, like Joe Biden, would try to implement. There's no time limit on this or anything. Like, it doesn't have to happen now. We just back burner that shit and start thinking about it. Maybe we could, before 2020 closes, we can give a gift to the world in the next, the next smuggerant.
I'll get to work on that, but I just want to say that my colleague over at the Gray Zone, Aaron Mate, calls these people Blue Anon.
Yeah. And
I love it.
That's solid. That's solid. And hats off to Aaron for that. Since Twitter and Facebook are acting like publishers now, Kevin,
yeah,
shouldn't they be subjected to the same sort of rules and regulations as publishers? Shouldn't they have to follow some sort of established set of protocols, because they want to say, oh well, no, we're a social media company and we're a private entity and we're technically not the government, so we're allowed to determine over like a quarter ounce of Molly what is and isn't speech. We're allowed to do that because we're Silicon Valley, and fuck you.
Yeah, my opinion is that, okay, I concede the point, although I think it's not really the point. But I've gotten into an argument with people who will say, look, they're private entities, they're private companies. They don't have to abide by the First Amendment. They get to do whatever they want as corporations. They get to decide what is on their platforms, and they can censor. And to that I say, I don't think that's the right reaction, because they're constantly making pronouncements about freedom and democracy. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to talk about internet freedom and how your companies exist in the world, and if you're going to pretend like, you're for things like not interfering in elections, and you're going to say that you don't want disinformation or whatever, so they're trying to work out how their platforms can exist in an environment that we've all lived in before they existed. And they have too much power, basically, because they're not regulated by any laws or really any guidelines that are handed down from Congress, and they should. But to me, if you're going to make any pronouncements about freedom and democracy, then you should uphold, in principle, the First Amendment. Not because you're doing something illegal, not because like, you should be able to be prosecuted if you violate the First Amendment. I mean, okay, maybe in my fantasy, I would like that. Maybe I would like it if citizens could have some kind of due process and recourse against YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and on these, as they just remove what you've been doing with your livelihood from there and say, oh, you violated a rule. We're not really going to tell you what you did, but sorry, you're never going to be on here on our platform again. And good luck. Go figure it out. Go figure out how to live in the wild, wild west of mass media now. Like that, to me, like that doesn't really, if that's the way they want to do it, that's fine. But to me, making those kinds of pronouncements means that since we have a First Amendment right to publish hacked materials, then you can't draft laws that say I can't publicize and cover stories about hacked materials on the internet. Like in a court of law, by the way, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but for those of people who aren't aware, there's a case related to the DNC and the Russian nationals who were accused of interfering in the election that was brought by the DNC, and they brought it against WikiLeaks too. And a judge threw it out and said that you couldn't go after WikiLeaks because they had a First Amendment right to publish the stolen or hacked materials on the Clinton campaign. And so, You know, it didn't matter how anyone got them. Didn't matter where they originated. It's just the fact that under our First Amendment, we have a right to report on and cover and share these materials, especially when they're in the public interest. And they were, because I know that there are people out there like Neera Tanden and James Clapper and other people who think that it was like the worst microaggression on the face of this earth that they had to suffer. But it exposed how Bernie Sanders was robbed of the nomination by the Democratic Party because they did all the different things that they had to do to make it really easy for Hillary Clinton to get there and win the nomination without democracy accidentally breaking out within the primary process. And that was what we saw in those emails. And that's why they're in the public interest. And that's why we care about them. And so I think that if we take any of that seriously, then it isn't fair to just concede. Like, we shouldn't just go, oh, they're private companies, they get to do whatever they want. Well, no, they have think tanks. They have people from think tanks like the Atlantic Council, and they have like Bill Kristol and the like ugly neocon figures that are advising them on how they should be global citizens. And if they're going to do that, then they need to adopt principles that are part of the First Amendment.
I mean, that's more or less what I thought you were gonna say. I wanted to hear it. Damn it, I did. No, it pisses me off so much, man. Like almost every day, I'm getting a phone call from a friend of mine who's a journalist or someone in independent media, and they're like, "It happened again," you know.
Yeah.
And I don't even know, like.
Well, what's really frustrating too is that, you know, these people get deplatformed or whatever, but MSNBC doesn't get penalized for 4 years of pure propaganda at the top of their lungs.
Right.
CNN doesn't get penalized. They don't get their ads taken away, or they don't get their YouTube
Redacted
channel taken
Tonight
down.
has funded by Russian state, fucking like on their Twitter handle.
My colleague Ronnie Kalick
Yeah.
works for something. Works for In the Now. She runs Soapbox. It's founded by Maffick Media. It used to be receive funding by Rupley. It doesn't anymore. It's been entirely divested. It's run by a woman who's actually living in the United States. And yet, Facebook insists that they put something there that says it is like Russian state-funded or Russian state-controlled media, and they're outright defaming them because it's not even true. The whole operation doesn't even get money from any Russian media. So like that is where we find ourselves in 2020. And I think this is the story we have to make sure continues to be told post Trump. Is like there are things that we can say and will always need to say about what Trump did, and certainly one of the most negative and vile things is that they came after Julian and prosecuted him. But let's not forget the way that the so-called hashtag resistance, the blue wave Twitter people, made it harder and harder for us to challenge this shit by being absolute children, if not assholes, about all of this stuff that was happening.
And it's interesting too that memes about masturbating with Jesus is seen as election interference, but the stuff that Twitter and YouTube is doing doesn't count as election interference, although it is clearly more influential than, some random meme that was maybe made by somebody who lives in Russia.
Yeah,
I made more anti-Hillary memes than all of Russia combined in 2016, personally. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, I put out more anti-Hillary Clinton stuff in 2016 than the entirety of the country of Russia. But, some memes about masturbating with Jesus were it definitely turned my opinion, for sure.
Well, my confession is that until I saw Buff Bernie, I was definitely not going to vote for him in the primary.
Dude, the magenta thigh. Don't even play, Kevin. That got you.
I did, and I think he's got he's throwing like a lightning bolt or something.
I'm not even sure anymore. I have the coloring book. One of my friends got it for me, like the actual Buff Bernie coloring book. And I really want to color it, but people tell me I shouldn't because it's like, it could be considered like a collector's item. But I really want to color it.
It's
really
a coloring book. You're supposed to color in coloring books.
I know, right? But people keep telling me not to do it, and so I look at it longingly, like I want to color you.
That's what Putin
That's
wants.
when you decide to listen to people. That's your bar for there. You spend like 99% of your day telling everyone under the sun to fuck off, and here's why I don't have to listen to your bullshit. But, oh no, I'm not going to color in my coloring book because Dave said so. It's like,
All right,
really?
this is a fair critique.
I'm mailing you a set of fucking colored pencils like tomorrow morning.
Can they be scented? I like the scented ones.
I'll drop a little like cannabis oil or something on it.
That would be appreciated.
Yeah.
I'll color you a picture and send it to you. You can hang it on your wall.
Andrew's going nuts because we haven't got to the statements yet.
Sorry, Andrew.
We just
listen fast, Anto.
Someone just crawled across.
Dude, somebody just crawled across it. That's the best thing I've ever seen.
That'd be my wife who thinks that you didn't see her.
That was super slick, yo.
Really great.
Ninja.
That's the best thing I've ever seen on one of these shows.
Pandemic life is fun.
Oh, okay. So should we get to some actual stuff that we were gonna do? Hello, anybody?
What are we doing first?
Got those statements up, Andrew?
Yeah, Josh has them in the.
I need to know which one you want to cover first.
We can start with the Cassandra Fairbanks stuff. So, just to give a little context and everything, back in February, Cassandra started releasing information about her relationships with people like Rick Grinnell and Arthur Schwartz and multiple other people about Julian's case and how she found out information that she did. And so the statement that she provided in court is something that kind of outlines all of that. And it shows throughout a period of time, the escalation of the Trump's Department of Justice, and just larger administration, including like unrelated ambassadors in Germany and such, against WikiLeaks, and basically the further weaponization of the different branches of government. So I think it's a pretty interesting statement to go through. Do we want to get into the first of the slides for that?
Sure. So this picks up halfway through Cass's statement. She says, Arthur Schwartz was extremely angry. The record of behavior towards journalists is widely documented, as are his close ties with the Trump administration. Arthur Schwartz warned me again being Cass, that people would be able to overlook my previous support for WikiLeaks because I did not know some things which he claimed to know about. But that they would be so forgiving now that I was informed. He brought up my 9-year-old child during these comments, which I perceived as an intimidation tactic. He repeatedly insisted that I stop advocating for WikiLeaks and Assange, telling me that, quote, a pardon isn't going to fucking happen. He knew very specific details about a future prosecution against Assange that were later made public, and that only those very close to the situation then would have been aware of. He told me that it would be the Manning case that he would be charged with, and that it would not involve the Vault 7 publication or anything to do with the DNC. He also told me that they would be going after Chelsea Manning. I recollect being told, I believe, that it would not be before Christmas. Both of these predictions came true just months later. He also told me that the U.S. government would be going into the embassy to get Assange. I responded that entering the embassy of a sovereign nation and kidnapping a political refugee would be an act of war. And he responded, well, not if they let us. I'm going to read these next two here real quick, and then we can talk about this. In my report, I described the extraordinary circumstances where I was locked in a cold meeting room for an hour while embassy staff demanded Assange be subjected to a full body scan with a metal detector before allowing him in the room. I described it at the time as eerily similar to visits I have made to inmates at federal penitentiaries. I considered at the time it seemed our government was getting what they wanted from Ecuador, as a former senior State Department official told BuzzFeed in January. As far as we're concerned, he's in jail. I noted in an interview with El País in July, President Moreno also said his ideal solution is that Assange may enjoy being extradited if the UK promises that the US will not kill him. A major issue was that Assange wanted to bring a small radio into the conference room to muffle our voices so that microphones undoubtedly surveilling the room would not pick up what we were saying as easily. Only 8 minutes of our 2-hour scheduled visit were in the end available because of the conflict with security staff. We were told if we wanted to talk, it must be done in the conference room, and that only 2 minutes were left. About this time, and roughly 2 weeks prior to his arrest, WikiLeaks began to sound the alarm. They were told by someone in the Ecuadorian government that Assange was soon going to be kicked out of the embassy. Pause. You know what? There's only like 5 sentences left of her entire statement, I believe. And then we can...
There's a couple more paragraphs.
Yeah, there's 2 more. So let's pause here for a minute. Because Kevin, I believe you wrote a pretty damn spectacular article about this. And I just wanted to know if there was if you've got like a couple of points that we may have missed in the screenshots that you would like to highlight for Cass's statement.
Well, yeah, the context I would just provide is that I think it's before what you read. She describes being on a direct message group with Arthur Schwartz, which is good setup for why we should take anything she has to say seriously. And she had some interaction with people in the Trump administration, or who were at least had the ear of officials and others in the Trump administration. And she raises a good question, which is why is it that Grenell, this person who was a German ambassador, why is it he was involved in brokering a deal with the Ecuador government when that's not anything that was in his sphere of responsibility? That's nothing he would have had to deal with. So how is it that, and this is a question we actually don't have answered at the moment, but what makes him the one that is in Ecuador working on this? We don't know. So, but I think there are a lot of details actually at her piece that she wrote for Gateway Pundit about her experience when this all happened, when it became clear that Assange was being treated as a prisoner now and not as the guest or as someone who was granted asylum. He was now, when he wanted to visit with someone, it was almost akin to a visitor showing up at Belmarsh prison, where they would try to scan him or search his person or restrict him from bringing certain items and other material into the meeting room to see visitors. And there are things in there that I'd encourage people to go look at and read if they're not familiar with this episode.
And when we were in DC in February, we were at the same event that Cass was, and we were able to get a pretty thorough interview with her, but the audio was just crap because we were at a hotel bar doing the interview because it was the only place we could really set up, just kind of outside and on some couches a little bit. But yeah, the DM group was Arthur Schwartz and like a number of people who had fairly high positions within the Trump administration, and they're just like talking strategy or whatever in a Twitter DM. And according to Cass, like she would just kind of like, she wouldn't participate that much, but she would link to a particular article or something like that, or come in to make a specific point about Julian. And after she went and visited him that time, that's when it really started to turn for her in terms of the favor or I don't know, kindness, I guess, that the people that were in that group had shown to her, ultimately leading to a very threatening, very expletive laden phone call from Schwartz.
Yeah, and what we learn, and we put this in the context of the UC Global operation that's taking place against the embassy. We know that in January, as you were reading, I think you were reading this part, that when she goes to tell him that this is what's happening, that they're planning to boot you from the embassy, just so we're all clear on this, she's giving him some inside knowledge about what could be going down with Trump and him and what could be his potential fate. And they are trying to whisper it. They're trying to keep it from being eavesdropped upon. But as it becomes really clear, they at least know that, oh, they're meeting with each other. He probably knows now because she's on this thread. And so, my guess is that, like, maybe they were able to get away from the microphones and maybe there was a limit to what they were able to pick up from that conversation. We simply don't know. But they knew that Julian was meeting with Cass, and they could only guess, what she was going to tell him. And they know that she knew information. And I think that set it up for it to just get worse and worse for him inside the embassy. I want to say that about this time, there's some really awful shit that is known to be going on in the embassy with him, even worse than what we were hearing in 2018 and before. There's a list that we could go down, but I want to say that his doctor, Dr. Sandra Crosby, met, and she left her notes out when she went to go get lunch for him. And she comes back and her medical notes from the visit are missing. The embassy surveillance people had them had taken them from her. And she went and she had to ask for them back. And I think they, were like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they just appeared later. And someone stole these doctor-patient notes that are supposed to be confidential. So we know what was happening. We know that as at the point that Cass is visiting with Julian, we know it was as intense as ever, the pressure campaign to get him out of the embassy.
So I'm going to jump back to Josh, this is the last one because we really did just discuss everything that happened in the one prior to this. This is 29 and 30. It's statement 04 on your call sheet there. And this is going straight to the phone call that we alluded to from Arthur Schwartz. He was ranting and raving that he could go to jail, that I was tweeting classified information. I didn't understand this because I'd read the information in a public source. I repeatedly told him that everything that I had said was from an ABC News article. He didn't calm down. I told him I would delete the tweet, which I archived. On having listened, wow, that's clunky. Aren't you a writer? On having listened since to the call, which I recorded, I believe that he probably considered that the reminder of my interest in Assange's case and knowledge that he and I spoke would confirm that it was he who had warned me of Assange's future extradition from the embassy. Schwartz informed me that in coordinating for Assange to be removed from the embassy, Ambassador Grinnell had done so on direct orders from the president. I believe this connected President Trump to those who have been reported as having secured the deal to arrest Assange. I believe Schwartz's statement to be correct because his close personal ties to both Trump and Grinnell are well known. And then she submitted a transcript of the call to the judge. This is as far as I know, this is the first and only time, and only like sort of semblance of proof that we have that puts Donald Trump directly responsible for this prosecution, whereas there was a sort of ability to, not necessarily plausible deniability, but a little wall of separation between the actions of his Justice Department and what his whims were as the president. To your knowledge, Kevin, is there another source besides this one that implicates Donald Trump directly? Or is it this phone call and that's what we have at the moment?
So far, we just know that there are people in the Trump administration who wanted to target Julian Assange. To this day, we don't really know what Donald Trump thinks about this prosecution. He basically brushed it aside like it wasn't something he needed to worry about. I mean, remember, after Julian gets expelled and arrested, he says, "I know nothing about WikiLeaks." That's what he said. I don't know anything about WikiLeaks. Like, I think, I'm going to make you go away. I'll just pretend I'm dumb and I've never heard of this before, even though we know that you know what we're talking about here. So that was the way he behaved about it. So I think, it doesn't have to implicate him because he said something. Like, just because he didn't say anything doesn't mean that we can tie it back to him. He's responsible for his people. So he's responsible for this guy, Arthur Schwartz, who is working with Grinnell, doing publicity. And, I don't normally want to highlight and champion the work of the Daily Beast, but they're the only place I could find who had done an article on this guy, Schwartz. And I think it's worth just making sure that people who are tuning into us know who he is. And they had a really good description back in January 2019, which is actually the same time that Cassandra was having this meeting, where it said that in the nearly 2 years since he arrived in Washington with a new wave of Trump appointees, mid-level players, and hangers-on, Schwartz has gained a reputation as a fixer, a behind-the-scenes operative, and a social media agitator with a particular specialty, shopping information on enemies and doing battle with reporters. So someone like Cassandra Fairbanks. That's helped him forge close relationships with numerous Trump world officials and family members like Donald Trump Jr. The two are now so close they spent last year's Super Bowl together. Good for them. Schwartz has served as a gatekeeper for many journalists looking to get in touch with the president's son and has occasionally served as his bulldog when negative stories are written about him. So, it just stands to reason that, he was a guy that, as they were trying to plot how they would do this, was concerned about what it would look like for the Trump family, at least, if not the Trump administration.
That's really interesting because at least with this testimony, that kind of gets rid of the idea that, if it's all true, which we have no reason to believe it's not, that he isn't personally responsible, which is such a big thing with the QAnon that seems to have even, infiltrated really intelligent people on the right. And I'm not saying that they don't have, any argument that Trump may be the best chance to pardon Assange. I don't know. It's an interesting thing that I hear. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
I would say that, I think there's a certain management style that Donald Trump prefers. I think he definitely seems like the person who wants the plausible deniability. So, don't tell me, don't make it my problem. Just take care of it. Just make it happen. You're the person who I trust to do this. There's only so much that Donald Trump really wants to deal with. He's really a lazy individual. Not that prior presidents haven't been lazy, but he just seems to be an extraordinarily lazy person who wants to have as little to do. And I think he accepts that, okay, for example, you're my Secretary of State. You're the person I appoint to handle diplomacy and negotiations with these countries. That's your problem. So Mike Pompeo, who's obviously one of the most hostile people against WikiLeaks, you're the one who I task with dealing with this. I'm going to tell you today what I think, and you just run and do whatever. And if I don't like it, you'll hear from me. I'll find a replacement for you. But if not, go do whatever. And I just kind of take it that all of these people in the administration who have been involved in this prosecution are carrying out the day-to-day, and it's really just not anything that he needs to know about. And it's not like he needs to authorize the prosecution. It doesn't come to that level. Fortunately, we're not talking about putting Julian Assange on a kill list and sending a drone to attack him. So it wouldn't require him signing off on that. So basically, the Justice Department can do whatever, and we're not talking yet about bringing him to the U.S. and holding him incommunicado in some kind of indefinite detention. But then again, he's already been charged, so there might be some things they could do with him that they wouldn't be able to do with other people who were brought to the United States, as far as subjecting him to interrogations. But yeah, I just don't think there's really any reason for Donald Trump to be involved. And so he just delegates it out to all these other people who we can tell have much more interest in this than he ever would, because they have passionately hated. I mean, I think it's fair to say that all the opinions he has about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange are learned opinions that are passed on from people around him. And the only organic and genuine opinion that he's ever had about them might have come from knowing that there was material being published during the 2016 election that made Hillary Clinton look bad. But I think that's the only time that he really ever was forming his own views about this organization.
I think that's probably generally true about him, on all issues. I don't think he really has any ideology or any independent thinking going on there. I think any thought process that he has is just, how does this benefit me? How can I, get something out of this? And I think that's all he's ever really been worried about. So I think you're right. I think most of his viewpoints, positions, policies, those are all received opinions. There's not a lot going on up there. I don't think. And you're right. He's very lazy. He's a lazy thinker. He just wants people to tell him what to say, what to do, so he can go golfing. That's really about the extent of it.
Well, the Jennifer Robinson statement really highlights it well. Because it was basically, hey, Dana Rohrabacher, you go do this thing, have Julian Assange tell you who revealed the information to him, and if he does, he's good to go, and if he doesn't, he's getting prosecuted. Like, that's...
The whole thing smelled like a fucking setup to me. I just want to make that perfectly clear. Like, that did not seem like there was just a benevolent offer of freedom being handed to. So
it's very much like when Thomas Edison offered Nikola Tesla like $50,000 or $20,000 or whatever for reinventing the electric motor, to be able to use it as a generator and invent the transformers in the street. And he's like, "Oh, you just don't understand American humor." I feel like that would have been Trump's Edison moment there if Julian would have said Seth Rich in public or something like that. It would have been like, I said we were going to do this, but you know how it goes.
But in that sense, do you guys think that might be, just looking for something hopeful here? In a way, that kind of sounds hopeful, because that's a mind that can change. That's not like a full system.
I am of the full belief that if the right person could get in Donald Trump's ear, you could get him to do just about anything. I've been saying that for years. If we could get the right person to talk to him about healthcare, we'd have Medicare for all. If somebody convinced him that he'd be put on Mount Rushmore, we'd have it tomorrow. If the right person got in his ear about Julian Assange, he'd set him free tomorrow. That is who Donald Trump is. He is so malleable, and he is so impressionable, and it really and he surrounded himself with the worst people on earth. So, and that's, this is what you get from the Trump administration when you surround yourself with Mike Pompeo and people like him. So yeah, I think that if we got the right person to talk to him and that he trusted and that would listen, that's why I think it was so great. We spoke earlier about like Glenn Greenwald going on Tucker Carlson. That's genius. Everybody needs to be doing that. I mean, if we could get Stella Morris to go on Tucker Carlson, if we could get, his dad or, anybody, any of his, Craig Murray or anybody. I mean, Kevin, go on Tucker Carlson for God's sake.
Hey.
Tucker
right now on the air in the middle of the vigil because you got it like that,
Tucker Carlson, call Kevin Gosztola and have him on your show so that we can talk to Donald Trump and change his mind, because I think it really that is possible. I totally believe that.
Wait, if Tucker Carlson watches this show, I'm gonna have to apologize for saying that his surprised face makes it look like he just got fisted at the dentist.
He only has like that one face like that.
That's someone who got a fucking prostate exam from their dentist.
Yes, he looks like a dummy, and by dummy I mean like the little, like, what do they call it?
Ventriloquist thing.
Yes, that's what he looks like. The little bow tie. I mean, I know he doesn't wear the bow tie anymore, but that's what he looks like.
He used to wear a bow tie.
With the fucking
Oh yeah, he did. The bow tie was cringy.
For years.
Dude, I had to watch.
wearing the bow tie after Jon Stewart broke Crossfire.
Yes, yes, that's true.
Because Jon Stewart was like, "How old are you?" And he's like, "I'm 35." And he's like, "You're 35 and you wear a fucking bow tie? Really, guy?" Anyway, and like wouldn't dignify it after that, and then proceeded to just destroy the entire show. It was a wonderful moment in I guess media history.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I'd recommend giving that a rewatch.
Yeah, Kendra, you need to go watch that and go look up some pictures of Tucker Carlson and his pretty bow tie. So cute.
I had to watch that guy every day at work for like 2 years.
Oh. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I do have to say,
and I still do, like, if Tucker Carlson for whatever reason was like, okay, the guy who just said that I look like I get fisted by my dentist needs to be on my show, I would go on his show.
Yeah,
I would.
Yeah. I would go on Tucker Carlson. Come at me, bro. I mean, progressives get so pissy when people go on Tucker Carlson. I don't give a shit. He has a huge ass platform. Get over yourself. For real. So stupid.
We've devolved into shit talk, Kevin, so I don't know how much time you have.
I was actually going to see if we could get the Kim.com slides up, because I've never actually got to talk with or hear Kevin's opinion too much outside of that article about the Dana Rohrabacher situation.
I'm glad you pulled those. I wanted to say one thing too, though, that I just think that like this whole thing that came out with Cassandra Fairbanks' statement and everything, I'm grateful that she came out with that too, and I'm sure that she took a lot of heat on the right for that. I mean, that's
and she took personal risk. Let's be honest, she took personal risk. I mean, this is not something. And listen, I get it. I had somebody the other day say something about how they don't like her. I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't like her politics either. And I think that she's, kind of a grifter, and she kind of floats wherever she can find an audience. And that's fine. Do your thing, girl. But I'm not into it. But if she's, somebody who's going to be helping in the fight for Julian Assange and press freedom, then she's on my team for that. Like, I'm okay with that. You guys have to get over yourselves and stop expecting everybody to be like this perfect teammate. It doesn't exist. You're going to have to work with people you don't like. It's okay. It really is.
And she's a good friend no matter what, I mean, that's a big thing. Like,
for sure.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
So
did you guys want to pull up the holy balls, Kim.com stuff?
Yeah, it's up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do one of you guys want to read it?
He says, just before the meeting between Julian Assange and Representative Dana Rohrabacher, I told Julian to expect an offer to secure his freedom and encouraged him to take it. I did this because I knew what Trump and Rohrabacher would offer through my back channel. Kim.com says I was involved in making it happen. And then the next screenshot is a DM exchange that I believe is supposed to be between Kim.com in the blue field and Julian Assange in the gray. He says a message from him directly to you. His exact words: when is this all finally coming out on SR? And we need his help. He is asking for your help. I'm told you have an important meeting tomorrow. Open the diplomatic channel I've told you about. Your freedom is in reach. Good luck. The response is, as I said, I have no need to do anyone favors. Others can follow the U.S. Constitution and do the right thing and cease harassing a publisher or face the same consequences that Clinton did. And Kim.com's only response to that is, I hope your meeting went well. Don't do favors, but get your freedom back, please. Are you familiar with that exchange, Kevin?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm vaguely. I know the first tweet. I didn't know about the other ones, but so my view about the Dana Rohrabacher proposal to Julian Assange is I think there's two things that are important. One is that we understand why you wouldn't accept the deal if you're Julian Assange, because you're being asked to do the one thing that violates the WikiLeaks code of ethics, which is to talk about your sources. And you can't really be WikiLeaks if you're going to go make a deal with the president about your source. That's going to expose. It's just a really difficult ask. And I mean, we know that up to that point, he had been very, very careful about what he divulged, even under the smear campaigns that were coming from within U.S. intelligence agencies against him and within the media, like CNN, about what he had done, and saying things that were really absurd, like these are forgeries by Russian intelligence that have been planted on the internet and stuff of that nature. So that's the one thing that's important to say. The other point is, if you read the statement closely, and the phrase that they used in the court was that this was offered for the truth of the matter asserted. And I'm gonna say something about the prosecution here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're correct or that we should take anything that they say with any legitimacy, but their stance on the statement was essentially that they weren't going to challenge what was asserted in it, but they were basically going to dispute whether or not it was Donald Trump that had sent Dana Rohrabacher to meet with Julian Assange. And I actually think, of all the things in this case that I have my extreme doubts about, and this is just based on what I know about Dana Rohrabacher, that I think that he was probably on some kind of grift trying to go there. And when I read it, it actually I don't have a negative view about what he was trying to do. I think it actually came from an all right place. I mean, the idea that he has laid out in there is that we shouldn't be ramping up tensions between Russia because they're a nuclear power. We're a nuclear power. And we've all heard arguments over the last 4 years, if you follow any publications that have a little bit of sanity, that we don't really want our governments to get to the brink where something terrible happens and someone fires a nuclear warhead. It just would be, it's self-evident that would be something we could not come easily back from. And so he's thinking, if you could just tell the world who was really the source, we could move on from all this Russia bullshit. You could just tell the world what your source was, and then Donald Trump will be able to show that it wasn't anything that these Democrats are saying, and we will be able to get rid of tensions and there could be some peace. And so that's what Dana was trying to do. And I think he believed that he was someone influential enough that if he got an agreement from Julian Assange, which, by the way, he's there with I think a highly discredited conservative journalist, I think his name's Charles Ross or Chuck Ross or something like that. He's there with another person. So he's thinking they can go back to Donald Trump and take this to him. And he's not going to have any idea what they're bringing, but he's going to come and say hey, wouldn't you like to know where these emails came from? I've got the guy who can tell you this, Donald. And that's what Dana's game is. And I think it might be sort of a way for him to get back into a position of relevance as someone who I think at that point would have been no longer in the Congress. And so, he's not really doing anything with, he's got no political power. So this would have been a way to have some influence over Donald Trump. And to me, I just think this was all aspirational. This was like, if I can get Julian Assange to agree to it, this is something I could take back to Donald Trump and we can make this happen. And so, yeah, I understand why Julian rejected it. I understand why Dana wants to do it, but I'm not sure if this exactly is the kind of evidence that we would want it to be in order to help Julian Assange. Because I think what the defense wants it to appear, like if they want the judge to read this and go, oh, Donald Trump prosecuted Julian Assange because Julian rejected a pardon offer and wouldn't do a deal with the administration. And that would be great if that's what it said, but I don't know if that's what the statement says.
Well, I think the parallel court case to this that's going on between Fox News, I believe the Rich family, that called for Julian to testify about the source of the DNC leaks is a reason not to disbelieve it, but to show that there are maybe other people with that same political goal. And regardless of if Dana was working on behalf of President Trump or not, or on his own volition trying to make a name for himself or earn some favor, I think it shows the inherent political nature behind Julian's case, that there's so many people that serve to gain or to lose or to benefit from his prosecution or him having the ability to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest thing, is that we have, like, of course, both sides of power hate him because he's a great journalist. That's what they should be hated. I mean, that's the other thing, too, that's so frustrating with the mainstream media, is, being a journalist, that's an amazing profession. That's a powerful profession. There is a lot of power there when you're in a room and they know that you are not a bullshitter and you're going to be asking the tough questions and you're there, so it's just so weird. It's by by them getting rid of their own power, then they've also gotten rid of our power as well. And it's so frustrating because even now, you can see with the censorship, they have to keep it quiet because if people knew, that's it. I mean, if they understood and knew, there'd be no question at all, and that's, hopefully we can do that. But
it goes back to the Roger Waters thing. Did you have the opportunity, Kevin, to watch that panel? It was Roger Waters and Pilger and McGovern last week.
Yeah, I did. It gave me one of my most favorite moments of the last week, which was Ray like this. If you know what I'm talking about, you're laughing right now. Because then Roger Waters goes, he put up his finger.
The whole thing was incredible, but the moment where
but I know you were going to say something serious, and I went it.
No, that's fantastic. I'm glad you were here to derail that. I am. But Roger Waters is like, I know what's going on because I live in your world, and there may be, and he pulled a number out of his ass, like 100,000 people who live in this world. But because of the way that it's been clamped down and information about just even the hearing was so heavily filtered, it's difficult to get regular people who are detached from the situation to understand what's going on, because if they were brought into this world just for a moment, they would be like, what are you doing?
That really speaks.
That guy out now.
Yeah, that kind of speaks back to our conversation earlier about talking to the left versus the right. It really doesn't matter. We have to talk to people who just don't know. There's so many people who just don't know. They're clueless. Maybe they've heard of WikiLeaks, maybe they've heard of Julian Assange, but they have no idea what's happening to him in broad daylight, out in the open. And that's why they suppress, all of the. I mean, amazing journalists did incredible work during those hearings, and nobody picked up that stuff. CNN didn't cover it. MSNBC didn't cover it. None of them. It's a historic court case on press freedom, and you couldn't get a mention of it on mainstream media. And that is absolutely by design.
That was acting like it was dull or repetitive.
Yes. Wait, the guy from The Guardian, what's his name? Christ, why am I going blank?
George. I can't pronounce it.
Whatever the fucking stupid name is. He's dumb, and he was trying to tell everybody that nothing's happened in this case for like a year and a half, and either he's on drugs or he's dumb. And I guess he could just be, a completely sold out tool, which is, the most likely option there. But yeah, trying to pretend like nothing has happened in this case in the last year and a half is absurd beyond like mention. It's crazy talk.
We wouldn't be here otherwise.
Yeah, I could name like a dozen things off the top of my head that are mind blowing, like blockbuster. The walls are closing in, Rachel Maddow style.
Oh, sure.
Big news things like this is a real bombshell. Like the fact that he's been spied on the entire time he was in the embassy alone should be, a massive story across the world, and it's not by design.
The indictment itself should have been that.
Yes. I mean, it's crazy that it's not talked about, but I think that that's, probably something that we need to remember is that just so many people don't know. They're clueless. They're absolutely clueless.
And to Kevin's point earlier, like even maybe our representatives, some of these people too, like have been so brainwashed that it's like, and I know Miss Assange pushes that a lot. I know we push it.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that like a Bernie Sanders doesn't know better. He knows better. Me
too.
He knows that Russia didn't. He knows Russia didn't interfere in our elections. He's just gaslight McSheepdog strikes again. He is such a danger to the left, to the country, to the world, because he is absolutely gaslighting the balls off of everybody. And he's not an idiot. He knows Russia didn't interfere and people ask me all the time, well, when did you know for sure that Bernie was, not a friend? And it was when he got cheated out of the election. And then rather than address election integrity, he spent 4 years pushing Russiagate, which you'll never convince me that he doesn't know better. He knows better.
Yeah. Maybe some though, or even like the whole idea of like just more of we know. So here's the information. Yeah. Now you know that we know this information too, and just as much pressure. But yeah.
I could see that there would be some elected officials who are maybe brainwashed and who maybe really did buy into the, Russia interference and all of that stuff. But it's really difficult for me to believe that somebody like Bernie Sanders, who I know is not an idiot, fell for that. You'll never get me to believe that. That's just not. You're not going to be able to wake up early enough to get me to believe that. Not happening.
Kevin, I was going to ask you one thing. You had mentioned on Jen Robbins' statement, but on Cassandra's statement, what was when that was read in court, what happened after that? Was there any, how did the prosecution address that, or what happened when the statements were just kind of read?
So it's hard for me to know how the prosecution feels about the content because they agreed to the statement. The only way that statements were entered into the record was if there was a meeting between attorneys on the team. No, these are like the lower level grunts that are doing the dirty work, and they or just the busy work, I guess is a better way of putting it. And they'll look at the statement together and they say, well, I agree that can be there. I don't think that should be there. And then the defense probably more often was like, well, no, that needs to be there. And the prosecution would say, okay, say it this way, and then we'll agree that that's a statement. So again, without boring people with that mundane process, that's what was going on. And we would have this time during court where we were on break and we were just waiting. and they were just haggling over what the statement was going to be. They did this for Noam Chomsky's statement. They did this for Patrick Coburn's statement. Did these for a lot of people's. And so they entered Cassandra Fairbanks' statement into the record, and we heard nothing from the prosecution about it. They're obviously intending to challenge it because they wouldn't want a judge to just take it at face value without any context from them. But we need to see what they might say in their closing argument that is going to be submitted. So let's see if I have my timeline straight. I believe within the next 10 days, on our timeline, we have the defense submitting their closing argument packet. I have no idea how long it's going to be, but I'm going to bet it's going to be several dozen pages, if not 100 plus pages. 2 weeks after that, the prosecution will submit to the court what their response is to any of that has been put forward by the defense. And so then maybe there might be something in there that gives us a clue about what they feel about Cassandra Fairbanks. I don't know. It's also possible they just ignore it. A lot of this stuff that they think is irrelevant, they'll just make that case and they won't say much more. They can state why they think it's irrelevant if it's outside the charges. There's a lot of this stuff that we should be mindful could never be entered into the record in a U.S. courtroom related to the Espionage Act charges, because a judge would never allow it as having anything to do with the conduct that's alleged. So it could come into play in sentencing, as if crimes were committed that should lead to a reduction in sentence, but it wouldn't have any bearing on whether he was guilty or not of what the government is accusing him, unfortunately. So that's what I think is, it's unfortunate that we actually live in a world where people missed the chance to really understand in real time what the government is doing to Julian Assange. Mm-hmm. And they're going to tune in to a trial if he's brought to the United States, and they're going to think that they gained some kind of understanding of what the government is doing, and they think that the defense will be able to stand up to these charges, and everyone's going to be eager to see how the defense handles what the government is throwing at them. But in all honesty, all of that came out in the extradition trial. And now at the U.S. trial, what we're going to see is how they have their arms tied behind their back. And there's a real limit to what they're able to do in order to help Julian not be convicted.
Thank you. Andrew, did we have more statements to go over?
No, I think it's the UK bill stuff now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just the UK stuff that's left.
So, Kevin, I thank you so much for hanging out with us for the better part of 2 hours, man. I would like to know if you have any closing thoughts for our audience. Wait.
Sorry.
Whoa.
We're doing it live. I got to interrupt because, Kevin, I have to say, I was so excited. I was driving. This was a few weeks ago, but I heard you on one of our local radio stations, KGNU, and you gave I can't remember who it was interviewing you, but you gave such a great interview, and I was just so excited to hear that on our local radio station. So anyway, thank you. I know you've been working super hard, more things than anybody even sees, and just that was awesome. And thank you for your reporting.
Well, I'm glad to hear it's getting around. I don't have any idea where some of these people broadcast their stuff. So I know some of them have agreements with radio stations. So
yeah, it was great. We were excited. Sorry, Steve.
No, just on that, man. Just, if you have any closing thoughts, please share those, and definitely let people know where they can find your work. And I am 10 days away from being able to add up whatever my super chats were from September and October, which I will be donating to Shadowproof. the Slow News Day audience knows that they've been supporting Shadowproof for the last 2 months and are happy about that.
Well,
thanks again.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the support. It's great to talk with all of you, and there's not a lot of opportunity that I get to just talk with a group of people who are engaged in this case. I think the last time that I had this experience, and I intend to do more of them, was when I got 8 journalists together, including myself, and did this mega panel event with some of the best people who followed this. I want to pick up on something that Roger Waters and Ray McGovern and some of the other people were talking about on this panel that you referenced, where I think they mentioned this whole thing of like getting to know the people who are really doing this work and trying to bring a spotlight, rather than just focusing on all of the organizations that are failing us, knowing these places that are doing good work. And I can't stress enough that, and I also think it's good for your soul. Rather than just being angry at these places that are never going to do what you want them to do, because that's not where they fit in. That's not the role they play. You can be angry at the Guardian journalists. You can be angry at actually, I think we should check. So I think there are some places we should contest, because I think there's a division there. There's a division that doesn't quite make sense. How can Alan Rusbridger be an advocate for Julian Assange, and yet these people who work at The Guardian won't raise their voice at all for Julian Assange? It doesn't really make sense. So in that respect, I say struggle away. But what's a lost cause is probably, the Washington Post, which I did a piece exclusively for the people who are subscribers of my newsletter. I wrote about an event that happened on free speech, where this journalist for the Post talked to the Columbia University president. His name's Lee Bollinger, and they talked about WikiLeaks, and they didn't mention the extradition trial at all. And it came less than a week after this happened, and they're talking about, and actually what they were talking about is what the lawyers for the NSA and the CIA would be talking about in their little private meetings, which is our risk, the risk to government secrecy. How do we handle that? How do we handle the fact that it's harder for us to keep secrets? That's what the First Amendment scholar was talking about. It just blew my mind. And it blew my mind too, because Jamil Jaffer is with the Knight First Amendment Institute, and that's a Columbia University project. So I'm just like, what is this president doing? But in any case, I think we need to focus on the people who are here for Julian, and if you can, reward them. And that doesn't necessarily mean monetarily reward them, but tell people that they're out there. If you like Richard Medhurst's YouTube channel and what he has to say about Julian Assange and the journalism he's doing, tell people. If you like Taylor Hudak's journalism, tell people. Get it out to people so that they watch. We have to be the people who amplify this work so that it fills this void. And I think there's a case to be made that a void is okay. If the corporate press or the establishment press isn't covering Julian Assange, then that means they're not putting out disinformation or flat out misinformation about Julian Assange. But then it means that it's more hard work that we have to do to reach people, because we know they control the airwaves and we don't. And so it's harder to get to people. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. We do have our own networks, and it is possible to spread some of this information and to mobilize people. And I think, we should always remember what, just internalize the thinking that Howard Zinn had as a historian, which was that it really only takes a small group of people to change the course of history. Because that's like, when you look at major events, it's always been really small groups. It's not like, in order to free Julian, it doesn't really mean that we need to have more than half of the US population wake up to what is going on. You just have to reach a critical mass. So that means probably like if you had 10 to 20% of people who are willing to do something to stop this, you could actually prevent a horrific precedent from being solidified in his trial and potential conviction. You could probably make some kind of you could achieve what we want to prevent this from happening. So I say that, and I encourage you, if you like what I'm talking about and would want to support my work, you can go to shadowproof.com and see my postings there. And I also have a newsletter, The Dissenter, that I'm focused on curating, which sends out coverage of whistleblower stories and updates on WikiLeaks going forward. And I do and I don't know. I've been kind of teasing it, and we'll see where it goes, but I might be working on a book.
Yes.
Awesome.
You should be.
Yeah, you should be. You should
Yeah.
be. I'll buy that shit.
Me
Hell
too.
yeah. Same.
It was good to talk to all of you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kevin.
thanks, Kevin.
Kevin, thank you.
Always
Yeah.
good to see you.
That was fun.
So
Yeah,
let me
Kevin.
just reiterate real quick too. When you do super chat Slow News Day for September and for the next 10 or 11 days, that's all going to go over to Mr. Gosztola. After that, I will probably do I don't know. I haven't thought about that. Maybe I'll take a poll. Let the audience decide where the next month's super chats are going to go.
You might have to take them
I
yourself.
like that you're doing that. I like that you're doing that. That's very cool of you, Steve. Money where your mouth is. I like it.
I can be paid in Western wear shirts. So, fucking go find like a kick-ass fucking like, you know,
I totally know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
made by Nudie. Like, yeah, I'll take that. I will for sure.
That's what you're getting for Christmas, my friend.
Woo!
Do
So
you have time to do the UK story tonight?
it's
I don't
pretty
know.
complex, but we can set it up and we can go into it in detail on Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
If you're not aware, oh Jesus, of course I start to hiccup for that. If you're not aware, the UK has legislation now that provides, I guess immunity is the best way to put it. Jesus fuck. Immunity to people or gives them the ability to commit any crimes in the course of their day-to-day job activities, as long as it meets a couple of pretty vague criteria. Kendra, do you want to pick up on this a little bit?
Yeah, sure. One thing I will say is that reading through this bill, it was like I was, determined to find, okay, well, what specific crimes can they commit, because it's so vague. And then finally, it seems like it's obviously pretty censored because it was hard to find, different art. And both Steve and I were looking, and then it was like finally found the one that said, that explained that's because it's everything, there are like no limits on it. And we're talking to, anybody that the government decides to basically give a badge to. You could be, here, be the government for a day. It's insanity. So
the Food Standards Agency. Y'all.
Yes.
Like they're just giving them carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they want.
So
Although
I
will say, I don't think that the dudes at the Food Standards Agency are probably all that wild. Let's be real.
I'm going to pull up some of the text of the bill, and then we'll show you like who this applies to. There we go. Full screen that. So yeah, how fucking Orwellian is that? The covert human intelligence sources criminal conduct authorizations. And I'm just going to go through the highlighted parts here real quick. We'll make sure that you guys have access to all of this in the description as well, or hit me up on the tweeters. But a criminal conduct authorization is an authorization for criminal conduct in the course of or otherwise in connection with the conduct of a covert human intelligence source. They just put some words in a sentence to be like, we're passing out licenses to kill like fucking hits of acid in the 70s.
Well, and like, is like a story about it. Think about like, I mean, this is all this stuff the spy agencies can already do, by the way. So these covert human intelligence source. I mean, correct.
Yeah,
That's like, that could be, you could be out there with a sign for Greenpeace, or I mean, whatever. And these are things that have happened already, but with the MI5. And I mean, wasn't there the whole thing with I think there's ongoing cases right now about them having, been with women for years and had relationships and kids and been abusive and all of these things. I mean, it's just insane. And now we want to give that power to, like Misty said, the Food and Drug, or the UK does to the Food and Drug Administration. I mean, it's crazy.
So real quick, the criminal conduct authorization, section 5 down at the bottom of this. Criminal conduct authorization is necessary on grounds falling within this subsection if it is necessary for if it's in the interest of national security, for the purpose of preventing or detecting crime, or of preventing disorder, or in the interest of the economic well-being of the United Kingdom. Now, this opens it up, and Richie Medhurst did a good little breakdown on this, but this opens up the possibility of unions being targeted, because you could make an argument to certainly Priti Patel and certainly Boris Johnson that unions represent a threat to the economic well-being of the United Kingdom. I mean, Jesus, we've got 100 or year more war on.
Oh, you're lagging,
Yep.
Steve.
Organized labor.
Hey, repeat that.
Nothing new, but what is new?
Repeat that last
What?
part. You cut out for like 30 seconds.
You cut out. Yeah.
Oh, just that this bill is. You could easily make the case to Priti Patel or to Boris Johnson that unions represent a threat to the economic well-being of the United Kingdom. Here's the list, or part of the list. I'll have to do this in 2 segments of, in addition to all of the covert or intelligence agencies inside the United Kingdom, we now have any police force, the national, I love it, I love that, any police force, anyone, doesn't matter, the National Crime Agency, the Serious Fraud Office, which is comical to me. Just because I grew up watching Monty Python. Oh no, I'm sorry, you want serious fraud, that's down the hall, this is minor fraud, you're gonna have to fill out a different form when you get there. Any of the intelligence services, the armed forces, any of Her Majesty's forces, revenue and customs, the Department of Health and Social Care, the Home Office, the Ministry of Justice now has a fucking license to kill.
In the age of coronavirus,
let me get through. There's another slide that's got a couple more offices on it. And portion of this, the Competition and Markets Authority, the Environment Agency, the Financial Conduct Agency, the Food Standards Agency, and the Gambling Commission. All of those agencies now have a fucking license to kill, a license to rape, a license to maim, a license to rob. Because why? Why? That's what I want to know. How is anyone safer if fucking Doug is having a bad day at the Food Services Agency and can make a convincing argument that he needs to off his neighbor? How is that making England a safer place?
Well, the even darker thing about it is the rise of eugenics and authoritarianism that it gives way to. Where you have the Health and Social Care Administration, the agency that is responsible for providing the government-run healthcare services in the home office, being also able to make economic decisions and murder to do so. So the next time coronavirus spikes in the United Kingdom, is there going to be this, well, we don't, as a nation, don't want to afford respirators or treatment or what have you for this, and just allow the murder of so many individuals.
Well, and also it says, or, the economic well-being of the United Kingdom. So, I mean, you know what I mean? It's not like, is that going to trump, it's just insane. It's not like you have to be preventing or detecting crime. I mean, almost anything could be looked at in that way.
And no part of the bill even has some type of like escalation clause or anything like that. Like if someone's committing a misdemeanor level 3, you could commit up to a misdemeanor level 1 to stop them or anything like that. Like there's no limit, there's no safeguard. It's literally, you can do what the hell you want and we'll fill out the paperwork later.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
I guess
really
with that, we'll just kind of, that's just a little, like a very brief, very broad overview of what this is. The bill references a corresponding and older piece of legislation that that for some just absolutely stupid reason I sat up reading last night and fucking I could use a cuddle. That's some scary shit. But we'll pick that up in detail on Saturday. And also joining us on Saturday will be Juan Pastorelli. Really looking forward to sitting
And
down
Andy
and
Worthington
again, and Andy Worthington, who you want to give his background there, Andre?
Yeah, he was actually one of the witnesses in court that got to testify.
That's the extent of what I knew.
Yeah.
I don't know why though.
Why he got to testify?
Yeah, what his background is.
Probably something to do with law.
Okay.
I don't have.
We'll have a better intro on Saturday.
You're just grasping at straws at this point.
No, I know that. I don't have my notes up in front of me for Andy, so I don't know off the top of my head what he had touched on in his case or in
By
his.
Saturday, we'll know what Andy does. We'll be ready for that.
Before the end of introductions, someone will have looked it up.
Yeah.
Or not introductions. All right.
We're so professional, you guys. It's like this is a well-oiled machine.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, it works. So before we do close, because that's about where we're at, I do want to give a shout out to Commander X. He does have an emergency support committee that has started to help him fundraise. There is a statement. I don't want to read it because I'm terrible at reading, but we can go over it either Saturday or even next Tuesday when we have Nat on with us. But it might be something cool to talk about now. I don't know if anyone has it pulled up that can read competently.
No, we don't.
Okay.
We got a wrap.
It was in the doc.
Yeah, no, it's not in there. It literally just happened earlier today.
Okay.
So I'm going to put the link to the fundraiser in chat for everybody. And please just take a moment. Commander X is a big friend of the show. He's someone that has made a huge impact in the world as far as advocacy for Julian and just his own personal work. And if you don't know who he is, check him out because he's a rather inspiring character.
And character is a great word because he is a character.
There was one time that Commander X did an interview with just some fancy pants journalist because he was part of this hacker group. And he told them that there was an action figure made in his likeness because there was some other country's TV show that Commander X was like this superhero. So he got it to be reported in a mainstream outlet that he had his own action figure.
No, I don't think it was a foreign thing. I think it was old. It was an old.
Was it
cartoon.
old? Okay. I know it was something like that, but they carried a story and had to issue a retraction about his action figure. So I love that. That's my
Yeah, it was
I
from
would
like
like
a
to
comic
see a
in the
fancy
fucking
pants
50s or something like
journalist.
that.
Yeah, it was old school.
I
Okay.
would like to see a fancy pants journalist and
We
review.
showed it. We pulled it up the last when he was on Slow News Day before he
I
took
don't
an
know.
abrupt and
It's possible.
silent
I definitely
retirement.
missed it. Yeah, I definitely missed it because I don't remember seeing that. But that's funny shit. I need to see that. Okay, fam. Are we done? Are we done?
Closeout
Is that
time.
it?
I think we're done.
Okay.
My name is Andrew Smith. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Zigman. I just want to thank Kevin for joining us, for Kimber and Josh helping out with everything behind the scenes. You can follow us on Twitter at action_4Assange. Find our call to action to get billboards and radio ads and newspaper ads. And if you're advantageous about it, skywriting done for Julian down in the description or on our website. Previous calls to action you can find there too. It's action4assange.com. Yeah, and just big thank you to everybody that helps make this happen and everybody that makes it happen by watching.
Yeah, and I'm Misty. You can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I have another show with my friend Jesse Zerwell called Facts on the Ground. We did a couple really cool. We had Glory on last week, which was so fun. So yeah, check that out. And thanks everybody in the chat for coming every week and hanging out with us and being dope as fuck. We love you. And yeah, thanks to my co-host, and super big thanks to Kevin Gosztola. You guys seriously stop sending money to politicians and start supporting independent journalism. If you can send money his way, send money his way. If you can just share his website and his links and his articles and his interviews, do that, because that's the only way we're going to be able to fight back against the propaganda machine. So yeah, that's it.
And my name is Kendra Christian, and you can find me on Twitter at edubs13, and you can follow Denver Free Assange at DNB Free JA. And I echo my co-hosts and thanking everybody, and big thanks to Kevin and for his reporting. And I mean, it really was incredible through the hearing. I don't know what we would have done without it. And for joining us tonight, and hi to everybody in the chat, and thanks.
I'm Steve Poikinen. I host a show called Slow News Day. If you're looking for it for like, I'm gonna guess the next couple of months max, they're gonna let me be on YouTube. You type in Slow News Day podcast into that search bar. But even better than that, I'm on the Rockfin, I'm on D Live, I'm on Library. I'm looking into a couple other different platforms right now. We need to drop YouTube. We need, like, I agree with Ryan Christian, the Last American Vagabond, that while we have YouTube channels, we need to do, you know, exactly what it is we're doing, but there's a fucking window on that, and it's definitely closing for shows like this and for shows like mine. I guess it, like my show at this point is just waiting for Whitney Webb to call me to tell me that somebody else that we know is getting deleted or taken out or taken down or, you know, targeted by the BBC or something like that, which is now happening at an alarming regularity. So do please go support the shows on other platforms. And as I'm gonna echo what Kevin said, like, when you find a journalist or a content creator that you like, talk them up and share their work and share their material. And when you do that, if it's someone who operates in the video realm, don't share from YouTube. Share from Rockfin, share from DLive, share from Library or BitChute or wherever the fuck else it may be. But don't give love to YouTube on this one, man. They're fucking just dickholes. I don't know what. Yeah, there's a lot. I could get a lot more elaborate, but I'm pretty sure that covers it. Slow News Day is live every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Please check that out. My co-host Gloria Jones is cooler than your co-host. Present company, you know, accepted. Thanks to Kevin, thanks to Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos, thanks to Mean Panda for the graphic works and putting everything together on that end. I love you guys very, very, very much. And I look forward to the next time we're all together, which will be Saturday at 1 Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, with Juan Passarelli and Andy Worthington. Good luck to us all.